Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and welcome back, guys. So now we are in the fifth chapter of the Sufi Path of Knowledge course, which I think it's like made up of a total of like what, 20 chapters, something like that. So we're like roughly less than a quarter of the way through the book. So well done to you. Like we've made some good progress actually, alhamdulillah. Um, now I believe we've entered a new section. So this is a section on ontology, right? How do we know the nature of things, where they come from? What is their origin? That's the study of ontology, the study of being, existence and non-existence. Okay. So I'm gonna read until I get tired, and then like I'll ask for a volunteer to pitch in. Um, but like hopefully you'll notice that as we progress throughout the book, like it's a little bit dry in the beginning, but as we move forward, you'll find it becoming less abstract, inshallah, and it'll start becoming maybe a bit more not interesting, but because it is already interesting, but more accessible, inshallah. Okay, so all right, just let me do one thing. All right, brilliant. Okay, Bismillah. So Ibn al-Arabi is known as the founder of the school of the oneness of being, وحدة الوجود. Though he does not employ the term, the idea permeates his works. Simply stated, there is only one being, and all existence is nothing but the manifestation or outward radiance of the one being, which is like a really nice summary of the idea. Hence, everything other than the one being, that is the whole cosmos, in all its spatial and temporal extension, is non existent in itself, though it may be considered to exist through being. Stated in these terms, the oneness of being may appear to some people as another brand of pantheism, but in fact, this simplified expression of what the Sheikh is talking about cannot begin to do him justice, especially since terms like pantheism are almost invariably employed with a dismissive and critical intent. Um, there's just no way you can even begin to summarize what he means by wahdat al-wujud. It takes some time to learn. When the Sheikh himself explains what he means by the statement that being is one, capital with a capital B, he provides one of the most sophisticated and nuanced expressions of the profession of God's unity, Tawheed, to be found in Islamic thought. His teachings did not dominate the second half of Islamic intellectual history because people were simple minded and therefore ready to accept pantheism in place of Tawheed, quite the contrary. So his teachings did dominate the second half of Islamic intellectual history. Um, this bears repeating even if you already know this, or if you don't know this, it's worth knowing this idea. But his thoughts, his system becomes absolutely widespread throughout the entire Islamic world, um, post-dating his death. Um, one cannot begin to underestimate the impact his teachings have had throughout the entire Islamic world, whether that be in the Arab world or in South Asia or the Malaysian archipelagos or even as far as China. Um, his teachings have really dominated that period until recent times. Yes, Irvina.
Um, since we are talking about two terms here, the first is pantheism. How would
Yes.
you define it?
I mean, I don't know. I know what people usually mean by it, but like I'm not a student on what pantheism is, but people use it in a dismissive way in order to say, oh, you're saying that God is everything. That's what they mean, like pantheism. He is kind of like everywhere, which for Ibn Arabi, it's not that simple. There's much more to it than that. Just very, very simply. But yeah, like someone else maybe can give a better definition than me. But that's like the simple definition of pantheism. God being everywhere.
Yeah, and how would that be connected with the ayah that says, the face of God is wherever you turn?
Yeah, totally. Totally. أينما تولوا فثم وجه Allah. Wheresoever you turn, there is the face of God, right? So you can find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in any direction you turn to. That doesn't mean you are turning in a direction that is necessarily pleasing to Him. So pantheism does not take into account the divine names. And what are the divine names? They're the multiplicity of the divine attributes and the all the opposites, the contrariety that comes with those names, the oppositions, the complexity that comes with those names. Whereas with pantheism, you're just kind of like, oh, you know, it's as if you're saying wherever you turn, it's the face of Ar-Rahman, like one name, whatever you think God is. But when you say Allah, Allah is the all-comprehensive name. So what the ayah means is you're facing Allah wherever you turn, but you don't know through which name. You don't know through which name. That's a major difference. So like you can obviously find Allah in money, but you're more likely to find his name, the misguider, and the one who gives tests, al-Muqtali, in money, for example. You're not likely to find the name al-Hadi, the guide, right? Even though you are facing a divine face. So that's like the basic difference.
Sidi Faris, if I may.
Yes, see, Zubair, right? Go ahead.
Yes. So I never thought of pantheism as God is everywhere.
Yeah.
This is a term which is used in many ways. I know the Persian equivalent is Hamaust. So Hamaust is like
Mm.
everything is, he's everything. So
Yes.
that's what I thought, that was the issue, that when you refer to pantheism and why people think it's shirk is because uh, the idea is thought of as everything is God, and that's where I thought in the first paragraph the distinction was made, which
Mm.
was what is everything else other than God is the manifestation, and I think that's what makes it easier to explain. I mean, of course, God is everywhere, but if you say God is everything, that's an issue. And I thought that was the problem that Sheikh was trying to solve.
Thank you for your contribution. It's a really hard concept to explain because, in the ultimate sense, God is everything. He is. But you have to explain in what way. So it's not incorrect. It's not wrong to say that He is everything because He is. That's the whole point of wahdat al-wujud, right? It's just one wujud. We can't have two wujuds. If you try and posit that there are two existences, that's shirk. There's no way that's possible. There's only one wujud and belongs to God, and it is God. Now, what remains, the kind of like the Olympic, gargantuous task that lays before you, is to explain how. And that's where you can be right or wrong. But it's not wrong to say that He is everything. But in what way? You have to understand in what way. So I
So
love this. I
just to
love
complete,
bringing in the, yeah. Tell me.
sorry, just to complete the thought, you're right in a sense that we are part of it, and I think one of the example which many shuyukh have been using in the context of Wahdat al-Wujud is, one is the whole, which is, for example, an ocean, and one is the drop.
Yeah,
The drop is
absolutely.
part of
Yes,
the ocean, but it
yes.
has, for lack of a better word, personality, or it has
Mm.
its essence. I'm trying not to use all these words, but you know what I'm trying to say, right? It's
The other, no, no, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. The other metaphor is the forms you see in existence are the waves of the ocean
mm,
that come and go, crash and arise, flow and ebb. Um, yeah. So, subhanAllah, like the thing you've just shown is that the minute you open up this topic, you already see how complicated it gets. But once you study Ibn Arabi, like the idea is like pretty straightforward. Um, but definitely it shows you that the kind of wahdat al-wujud he's talking about is different to like a simple pantheism, right? That's the main idea. Sidi Said Bukhari, go ahead. And then after that, we'll continue reading.
Okay, so I was curious about the next sentence, perhaps we will read, is the answer that William Chittick gives himself. He says that this becomes controversial because of the simple mindedness of the
Yes.
later generation. So I think one impression that I get is that he is referring to the Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah and his followers. But secondly, I'm not satisfied with. I think it doesn't seem to be giving a very plausible answer that what makes Sheikh controversial about this issue. Could you throw some more light on that?
By the way, he's saying that they're not simple-minded. He's saying they're not simple-minded. So the second half of Islamic intellectual history is not simple-minded. So they did not accept Ibn Arabi's teachings because they're simple-minded, so they're not simple-minded. They accept it for other reasons. So that's what he's actually saying here. And you're right. Um, the subhanAllah, like why was he controversial? Because you get like different strands of human like what human personalities and approaches to all things in existence, including religion. So like you get like this really conservative movements you find in every society. Like for example, in the Ottomans, I can't remember if I can pronounce the name correctly, but it's like the Kazidali. It's like this conservative group that was really against Akbarian thought, and they wanted to practice like a more pristine form of Islam. And I think that goes back to personalities. Different people have different personalities, and so they relate to religion in different ways. And so, like the job of a founder of any religion is to be able to contain all those personalities and put each person in the right place. Um, Wallahu a'lam. Uh, Obviously, your question would need like an hour to answer, right? But that's like the first thought that came to my mind. Um, but yeah, see, I'd love to discuss that question with you more actually later on if we can, inshallah. Um, so where did we get up to? What Ibn al-Arabi provides is an inexhaustible ocean of meditations upon the unity of God and its relationship with the manyness of all things, a synthesis of the various currents of Islamic intellectuality that yielded endless insights into the nature of existence. By the way, see, Sayyid Bukhari is also like because now I'm just the thoughts are churning in my head. Um, you get different kinds of people, right? So Ibn Taymiyyah said what he said. Um, Imam Dhahabi comes from his school, right? Imam Dhahabi is one of his major students, right? One of the things that people say is that Imam Dhahabi sometimes criticizes Sheikh al-Akbar, but at other times he recognizes that he's a saint. And then his objection, Imam Dhahabi's objection to Ibn Arabi is less that he's a heretic. Well, na'udhu billah. His objection is more that people may not understand what he's trying to say. And so your average Muslim, excuse me, your average Muslim should not be reading his works. He said something to the effect of, it's better for the non-educated Muslim to hide behind his cow, than come across these writings, right? And that's Imam Dhahabi. God in himself is being, and non-existence has no relationship to him. That which sets everything other than God apart from God is the admixture of non-existence. Things, entities, possible things, loci of manifestation, forms, attributes, these are all names applied to that which is other than being, to non-existence. But non-existence does not mean absolute nothingness, since the things, whether as objects of God's knowledge before they're found in the cosmos, or as existent entities within the cosmos itself, possess certain modes of relative existence. That is, existence through the other, who is God, the necessary being. In God's knowledge, the things exist neither in the cosmos nor in themselves, but they do exist in God in a manner analogous to the way our thoughts exist in our minds. In the cosmos, the things have no existence of their own, but they leave their marks and effects upon the manifest, who is being. So Allah, one of God's names. What we actually observe in the universe is either being colored by the properties of the non-existent things, or the things made manifest by being. Um, you know, that would be Ibn Arabi's quote unquote pantheism, if you can call it that, right? But we never see the things themselves, since that which is non-existent is not there to be seen, nor do we see God himself, since God himself is beyond all perception and understanding. The cosmos is he, not he. In the last analysis, we see only the properties of the divine names, which are the qualities and attributes intrinsic to being. Really, like the divine names is the answer to Ibn Arabi's system. Um, can I get someone to volunteer for me, please? Irvina, thank you so much.
Yes, Bismillah. Being, existence, and the existent. Wujud and mawjud. The discussion of the oneness of being centers around a single word, wujud, which has been translated thus far as being, existence, and finding. In the present context, two of these translations will be employed, though sometimes it will be necessary to resort to the expression being existence, to emphasize the fact that both meanings need to be understood from a given passage. By being is meant wujud, inasmuch as it designates God's own reality and essence. By existence is meant wujud, inasmuch as it designates the fact that certain things are found in the cosmos. When existence is discussed, it is contrasted with a thing or entity that exists. Hence, one speaks of the existence of the cosmos or of a tree, but the term being, with capital B, refers strictly to God in himself and cannot be juxtaposed with any entity other than being, since God's thingness or entity is being itself. Muslim philosophers, like many thinkers in the Western tradition, distinguish between the thing itself or its essence or quiddity, mahiyya, and the existence of the thing. We can ask about anything in the universe, whether or not the thing is here to be discussed, and whether or not it exists. Dragons and phoenixes are things to be discussed, even though none of us has seen one. According to this view, the existence of anything we discuss may be discerned and separated, at least by the mind, from the quiddity of the thing, except in the case of God. Or, if you prefer, you can say that God's existence is identical to his quiddity, which is to say that he is being. We can distinguish between a man and his existence, but we cannot distinguish between God and his being, since he is being as such. The word quiddity derives from a literal Latin translation of the Arabic word mahiyya, which was coined from the sentence ma hiya, in other words, what is it? If this question is asked about anything, the answer will be it is a horse, a house, a galaxy, and so on. We can then discuss that thing without regard to whether or not it exists. But when we ask, what is it about God? The only answer sufficiently broad to include God's whole reality is to say wujud, which, for the Sheikh, is a philosophical term equivalent to the name Allah. God's quiddity is being itself, and we cannot discuss his quiddity without regard to being, since then we would be discussing something else. Ibn al-Arabi took over most of the vocabulary connected to the discussion of wujud from the Muslim philosophers. The term wujud is not mentioned in the Quran, and the identification between it and God, or the necessary being, wajib al-wujud, seems to have been made originally in philosophical texts, not in the sources of the tradition or by the theologians and Sufis. Hence, an understanding of the philosophical background of this terminology can help toward the perception of Ibn al-Arabi's role in synthesizing the schools of Islamic thought. But in the present work, this allusion to the importance of the input from philosophy will have to suffice. The Sheikh, it should be remarked in passing, rarely employs the term mahiyya, preferring its synonyms such as entity and reality. But he does use it in instructive contexts such as the following. The unity of the essence in itself has no known quiddity. Hence we cannot ascribe properties to it, since it is not similar to anything in the cosmos, nor is anything in the cosmos similar to it. Therefore, no intelligent person undertakes to speak about his essence unless on the basis of a report received from him. And even when we bring the report, we are ignorant of the relationship of that property to him, since we are ignorant of him. Hence, we have faith in it just as he has uttered it and knows it, since according to both the law and reason, proofs can be offered only to negate similarity.
Thank you very much. Okay, so guys, just two things. So, one, you can already see here like why pantheism isn't what Sheikh Al-Akbar is talking about, because pantheism doesn't really have a concept of tanzih, and we have a concept of tanzih and tashbih. And what's the relationship between the two, transcendence and immanence, right? You're talking about the unity of the essence, which is beyond our conception. So you can absolutely not say that the essence is very simply identified with a thing that is created. That's impossible. So he would never be talking about pantheism in that way, right? Whereas you ask the question, in pantheism, do we identify God's essence with the thing, right? It's just so obviously not pantheism from every perspective. The second thing is we talked about this a lot last time. The problem of understanding what are called the mutashabihat in the Quran, the allusions and descriptions of God's supposed similarity. The problem of that, and how do we deal with that? How do we resolve that issue? And just a brief pointer here, which we talked about a lot last week. Or let's go through an example. Like when God talks about his hand or his hands in the Quran, or sitting on the throne, or in the Hadith Qudsi, when he jogs, when he trots, like when he basically does a brisk walk or a short run. We believe in the reports, but we don't think of them. We don't say about them, he runs the way I run, he sits the way I sit, he has a hand the way I have a hand. And you have to, because we believe in his word, there's nothing like him. So there's nothing like his hand or his sitting. But also, he makes a very important point here. He says, like, language, the nature of language is ambiguous. If you don't know that about language, now it's precise and ambiguous, but if you don't recognize that it has an ambiguous dimension, then you just don't understand language. It only becomes clear when you specify what you're talking about. So what do I mean? Let's look at the word hand. So when we say hand, and I say this wooden hand is not working, and then you think to yourself, oh, what is he talking about? So you have to ask for clarification. What are you saying? Because we can talk about the wooden hand of a clock, which is very different to the hand of a human being, which is very different to the hand of fate. The hand of fate dealt me a low blow, or I got lucky because of the hand of fate. So when you say hand, You don't know which hand we're talking about until you specify it. Now we know what a clock is, and we know what a human hand is. So once you specify it's a human hand or the hand of a clock, we can talk about it, and I can ascribe it correctly. But you have to know what a clock and a hand is before you can do that. Well, we don't know what God is. No one knows what God is. So when he says he has a hand, you have no idea which hand he's talking about, if any, within the realm of your experience at all. So that's why we don't talk about it if you are intelligent. Does that make sense? Thank you, Irvina. Then let's carry on.
Since the being of the real permeates the cosmos, no one denies him. Mistakes arise from seeking to know his quiddity, and this leads to the disagreements concerning him which have become manifest in the cosmos. Both the philosophers and Ibn al-Arabi attempted to explain the relationship between the many and the one, the creatures and the creator, the existent things and being, the possible existence and the necessary being. In the context of the philosophical terminology, the basic issue can be phrased in the simple question: if God is wujud, are the things also wujud? The Shaykh answers that God alone is being, and the existence of the things is identical to that being, though the quiddities of the one of the things as quiddities are not being. In themselves, the things are non-existent. In other words, he replies to the question, are the things the same as God? By saying yes and no. They are he, not he. The creatures dwell in an ambiguous middle ground or barzakh, whose actual situation is exceedingly difficult to express in words. In trying to explain their situation, the Shaykh employs most of the terminology used by the philosophical and theological schools, while making full use of the possibilities provided by the Quran, the Hadith, and the writings and sayings of the Sufis. Ibn al-Arabi employs a number of sets of terms to refer to the creatures. Some of these are commonly used in Islamic philosophy, others by the proponents of kalam, and still others derived from the Quran and Hadith. The Shaykh makes no attempt to keep these sets of terms separate. Having adopted various technical terms as his own, he employs them as he sees fit without regard to the context from which they have been taken. To understand his broad and sweeping explanations of the nature of being and existence, it is necessary to be familiar with all these ways of expressing the basic ideas. Hence, as the first step in understanding the richness of nuances involved in the concept of the oneness of being, it is necessary to define the most important relevant technical terms and to illustrate how they are employed. The first term that needs to be understood in relation to wujud is the past participle from the same root mawjud, which will be translated as existent or existent thing. An existent thing is an entity which exists on any level or in any world which is envisaged. Occasionally the term is also employed to refer to God himself as he who possesses true existence or being, in which case it will normally be translated as the existent being. The objects that we find in the world around us are all existence in the corporeal world, while our ideas are existence within our minds. A given idea may correspond to something that exists out there, or it may not. a thing known by God, but not found in a created world, is called non-existent, ma'dum. Not in the absolute sense, since it possesses a certain mode of existence within God's knowledge, but in the sense that it has not been brought into spiritual, imaginal, or corporeal existence.
So the sentence that summarizes that idea really nicely is and succinctly is um, non-existence is not there. There's no such thing as like complete 100% non-existence. Okay. So we can go on to the possible things. Can I get another volunteer, please? And thank you so much, Rufina. Otherwise, I'll do it.
I can do it.
Okay, thank you, Lubna.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Possible things, the philosophers refer to the divine reality as the necessary being, واجب الوجود. In order to differentiate
Lubna, are you on mute or? Sorry, I
outcome.
don't hear you. Yeah, sorry, could you repeat that? Because we couldn't hear you. So in order to differentiate.
Okay. In order to differentiate it from possible things ممكن and impossible things ممتنع or محال, the necessary being that reality which cannot not be. The impossible thing cannot come into existence within the cosmos, though it can exist in a certain fashion in the mind of a man or God. The impossible thing is that reality whose relationship to existence and non-existence is equal. If the possible thing were an existent which couldn't be qualified by non-existence, then it would be the real. If it were a non-existence which couldn't be qualified by existence, then it would be impossible. The possible thing may or may not exist depending on circumstances. These circumstances go back to the desire of the necessary being, who must give preponderance, tarjih, to the existence of the possible thing over its non-existence for it to come to existence as a thing in the world. Hence, the necessary being, having given existence to something, is also known as the preponderator مرجح مرجح. Okay.
Yes. Ravina, go ahead.
How would you translate preponderator or explain it? I don't know the word.
Okay. This goes back to Ibn Sina's idea. And it's the rational argument for God's existence. But not that the Sufis and the Awliya particularly care too much for the rational argument, because you need to experience God to know that exists, right? And experience faith in some way. But you can also produce a rational argument for his existence. So those words come from that argument, in which it's an argument that says this, right? If you look at the words that he's using now, right? There's possible, impossible, and necessary being, right? Okay. So if you look at the existence of a chair and you say, okay, is the existence of that chair necessary? You go necessary to what? Since we're new to this argument. And then you respond, is it necessary in itself? And then you respond, no, of course not. The existence of a chair is possible. Is it necessary to existence? So a chair can come into existence or it cannot come into existence. So the chances of a chair coming into existence are 50-50. They're equal, right? Its existence and its non-existence is equal, right? So its existence is possible. Now do that for every other thing in this world. And you ask the same question, is the existence of a mountain, a drop of water, the ocean, trees, stars, are their existence, the cosmos, Is it necessary? And the answer is not really, because in Islamic Aqidah, we say that everything has a beginning. So you can establish that the cosmos has a beginning. That's a rational argument you can make. That it must start at some point in time, in actual time and space. So it therefore follows, if the existence of the cosmos, right, is not necessary and it's just possible, so the chances of it existing and non-existing are equal, okay? It's 50-50. When it's 50-50, there's a stalemate. It doesn't move. Who decides to give preponderance to its existence? So here, preponderance means weight, predominance, weight. Who tips the scale? A preponderator, a murajjah. Who is the preponderator? Who is the one who tips the scale? Well, it can't be another possible thing, because then you go back to the same problem. The existence of a possible thing, his existence is equally 50-50. He could exist or he could not exist. So the only thing that can tip the scale is a being who's not possible. It's a being whose existence is necessary. He tips the scale. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's what those words mean.
Thank you so much.
Zanira, Allah's courtesy is not necessary. Allah's courtesy is a creation. The only way, Zanira, you mean that's necessary, because the courtesy is also identified with the cosmos, it's wajib bi ghayrihi, not wajib bi dhatihi. There's a distinction. Wajib bi ghayrihi, laysa wajib bi dhatihi. If you argue that the courtesy, the cosmic throne, is wajib bi dhatihi, you've made a second God. So we'd never say that. So it's only wajib bi ghayrihi. Who is the ghayr? Allah. That's why before, I don't know if I can find it, you saw the word other with a capital O. So that's God. That's wajib bi ghayrihi. That's why you've got this other with a capital O. Ravina, go ahead.
Would wajib bi ghayrihi be explained when we say, okay, if we ask, is the tree necessary to exist? And then we answer yes, because in order for oxygen to be produced and stuff like that. So
that's wajib bi ghayrihi. That's it's necessary for a particular purpose, but not wajib bi dhatihi.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah. It would also mean that its existence is made necessary through something ontologically higher than it. That's also what it means. Sorry, Lubna, could you continue, please?
And
Yeah, sure.
I was also sorry.
No,
So
go
I
ahead.
was just wondering about the other question, and that was like, for example, if anything which may exist in the mind of God or in the mind of a man, and can it still be considered as non-existent? Because in the mind of God or in the knowledge of God, if anything can exist, so it does exist. I mean, it cannot be considered as non-existent.
Well, you know what? It can't be considered purely non-existent, but it is non-existent. Like, for example, like a very simple example is Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam was non-existent before Allah created him with his two hands. But was he completely non-existent? No, because his ruh was circling the arsh before his creation, and Allah knew him in his mind, and he was his object of knowledge. So you talk about relative non-existence, right? But you can talk about non-existence in general too, because Adam did not exist. Because the word existence can also mean in this world, he wasn't made, so he was non-existent, relatively speaking. But you're right. There cannot be anything that's 100% non-existent. That's true, yes.
Okay,
Uh,
Jazakallah.
Allah يبارك فيك. Yeah, sorry, Lubna, go ahead.
Okay. So God gave preponderance to the existence of the possible things over their non-existence because they sought this preponderance by their very essences. Hence, this was kind of submission in inqiyad. Am I pronouncing it right?
انقياد, yeah, yes.
Inqiyad, yes. Inqiyad of the real to this seeking on the part of possibility. And also a gratuitous kindness, imtinin. For God is independent of the worlds, but he described himself by saying he loved to be known by the possible things, since he wasn't known. And one of the characteristics of the lover is to submit himself to the beloved, but in reality, he only submitted to himself. The possible thing is a veil over this divine seeking.
That's like a really loaded paragraph. Does anyone
Yeah.
want to ask about that?
Mm, what does it mean by inqiyad? Is to submit, right? Is to slam
Yeah,
or
yeah. It's like from Surah سورة ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا
okay.
عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك.
ظهرك.
Yeah, it's like what made your back bow down, right? Submit.
Mm,
So it's as if because so Sheikh Al-Akbar talked about this in other places, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's the absolute Malik, right? He's the absolute king. Um, but in a different way, it's as if we make him submit in some places. So, like, for example, if you think of the mother rules over the baby, no question about it. But what happens when the baby cries? The baby is in a different way ruling over the mother. The baby makes the mother submit by drawing her to himself or herself and saying, "Give me food, give me milk." Right? This motherly submission is what he's talking about. When he says, "Before we were made, our essences were crying out to be made." So that draws God, that draws that haqq to us, and he makes us. From his imtinan, his gratuitous kindness, which means it's the kindness that's not earned. There's a kindness which you earn, and there's a kindness which you don't earn. I didn't earn the rahmah of existence. I didn't earn that. That's a free gift. Whereas if I pray and I get a reward, I earned that rahmah, right?
oh, okay. Thank you.
So that's
That's
from
beautiful. Mm,
so then on top of that, he says, because the possible things are himself, they're just manifestations of himself. So he's not really being drawn by other things. He's being drawn by himself. He loved himself. The love that the
mm,
mother feels for the baby, that's what God feels for the possible things. And they are himself, so he feels that motherly love towards himself.
mm. And we
Uh,
should be grateful for this, like the imtinin thing, right?
yes, yes,
Yeah.
100%.
Mm.
Absolutely. Uh,
Okay.
Sidi Said Bukhari, go ahead.
Thank you very much again. I was just wondering about the debate between the Asharites and the Mu'tazilites, and that debate about the previous philosophers like Ibn Sina or Farabi and Mutakallimin. And that is, for example, okay, the debate goes like that, you know, why people, for example, why things happen the way things happen. So there are essences by which things happen. For example, if a human being has got an essence, so things would be shaped like that. For example, his nature would be shaped like that. But then there is then the position of the Asharites is that it is the God's omnipotence that is challenging this position. So the God intervenes into that. Now, I was just trying to make this binary between the two, and he says that God preponders, and this preponderance is not self-contained and independent of God. Independent shows the self-sufficiency of the God. In fact, there is some essence in the in that being that also uh, you know that that also invites God's rahmah or something like that. So is he trying to creatively draw a bridge between these two traditions, which were previously that the mutakallimin were trying to. Are you getting my point? Because this does not simply explain if we keep till Al-Ghazali's debate. So the Ghazali situates himself into the Asharites, and in Asharites he says that God's intervention, if it is not established, then one cannot claim about himself. God cannot claim about his omnipotence. So, in order to show his omnipotence, he intervenes into every single moment of one's life. Everything is determined by God's intervention, right? Now, here he is trying to bridge that. Do you feel like that? Or, I mean, it may be my
Remind me,
misunderstanding.
what was the Mu'tazili position you described?
Sorry?
Remind me, what was the Mu'tazili
Okay.
position you described?
The Mu'tazilite position was that the beings are given essences, and what they become, what they are, it is because of their essences, right? And now this Mu'tazili position, when it was stated before the Al-Ghazali, so he says, because that challenges the omnipotence of the God, that does God have control over every single thing in this world? And then he tries to, sides with the Asharites, and he says that, look, the omnipotence of the God is what it is. Now, God intervenes into the shaping of the things. It's not the essences that determine and shape the things. It is, in fact, God's intervention into the
Okay,
things.
okay. So that's a position that Mustafa Sabri would agree with as well, of course, a very Ash'ari position, and he criticizes Ibn Arabi for it. Ibn Arabi doesn't often try to reconcile philosophical positions. He might be doing that in this paragraph. I don't know because I'm not expert enough in Kalam to answer your question. Um, but I will say that Ibn Arabi took the term ayan and thabita, the immutable entities, from the Mu'tazilis. He took it from the Mu'tazilis, and he sometimes says that the Ash'aris are wrong on certain views. So he's more likely to tell you why those two camps are wrong in certain respects or where they go right. He's more likely to do that than to try and build a bridge. But he might be doing that in this paragraph. Who knows? I don't know. Um, he completely agrees, by the way, that with like the Ash'ari position of God's omnipotence, but also he agrees with the Mu'tazili position that it's the essences that determine certain things. So that's the whole point of divine adab. You know where God intervenes, and you know what has nothing to do with him. So it's correct. There are certain things that have nothing to do with him, and it's just like it's not his business.
Okay.
From
And
that, you get the secret of predestination.
okay, and you have taken the name of Sheikh Mustafa Sabri. Do you know something to read about him in English? Because he wrote everything in Arabic. And are there any works which are translated or?
Yeah, my friend did a PhD on him, but I don't know of any published works. I could ask him if you're okay to read it.
I shall really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, just send me a message and remind me. Okay. Um, all right, guys. So, um, let's stop somewhere. Guys, are you okay to go up to this part in the next page, or do you want to stop sooner?
I'm good.
Okay, okay, Lubna, then let's quickly finish it.
Sure. Among the terms necessary being, possible thing, and the impossible thing, Ibn Arabi devotes by far the most attention to the possible thing, since his major philosophical task is to explain the nature of the existence that's attributed to the possible things, once the preponderator has brought it to the cosmos. At the same time, he sees the fact of the possibility imkan as one of the greatest rational arguments that can be offered to prove that there is a God. In this sort of context, the Sheikh ascribes the term wujud to God not to designate his reality, but to point out that he can in fact be found. He does exist. Hence, the term wujud can be translated um, here as the existence of God rather than his being. In a section on the meaning of travel, safar, Ibn Arabi points out the spiritual teachers have described many things of traveling. The first of these has to do with the mind's journey to find signs of God and to understand that he exists. The traveler is he who travels with his reflection in search of the signs and proofs of the existence of his maker, Sana. In his traveling, he finds no proof for that other than his own possibility. The meaning of his own possibility is that existence is brought into relationship with him and the whole cosmos, and they receive it, or non-existence is brought into relationship with them and they receive it. The two things are equal for him. So in respect of his own essence, the relationship of existence to him cannot be preferred over the relationship of non-existence, sorry. So he's poor towards the existence of a preponderator who will give preponderance to one of the two descriptions over the other. When the travel reaches his way station, passes by this watering place and uncovers the existence of his preponderator, he begins a second journey into the knowledge of that which be known about this maker. This maker who has brought him into existence, he uncovers the proof that he alone possesses attributes of incomparability. This is that he is incomparable with the poverty that belongs to the possible thing. He understands that this preponderator is the necessary being through itself, for whom is permitted nothing that's permissible for the possible thing. Then he passes in his journey to another way station and he uncovers the fact that this necessary being through itself cannot possibly become non-existent.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thanks so much, Lubna. Yeah, that's exactly what we were talking about just now. Irvina, go ahead, and then we'll finish this last paragraph.
Yeah, I somehow got lost in that suffer paragraph when it was.
Should I read?
See, Said Bukhari. You want to read like the last paragraph? Okay, go ahead. Irvina, with regard to getting lost. Okay, Irvina, let's finish this just so we can stop at a section, and
Yeah.
then we'll come back to your question. Okay, see, Said Bukhari, go ahead. So the sum and this
No,
paragraph.
no, I actually I may misunderstand that. I thought that somebody is reading, so I offered myself. I thought that you were asking Irvina for the question, I think. So I mean,
Yeah.
the previous reader can read. I mean, I just
Oh, sure.
intervene into
Okay.
that.
Okay. No, that's totally fine. Okay, Lubna, if you want to finish these two paragraphs.
Yeah, sure. The sum total of the possible things, whether or not they exist, is called the cosmos. If we accept that at a given moment some of the possible things have been given existence by a preponderator while others have not, this has no ultimate effect upon their status as possible things. The possible things include everything other than God at all times, not just at the present moment. The cosmos consists of everything other than God. It's none other than the possible things, whether or not they exist. Possibility is their necessary property in the state of their non-existence as well as their existence. It's intrinsic. d- what? ذاتي
That.
ذاتي to them, since preponderation ترجيح is necessary for them. Hence, through this possible things as the preponderator is known, and this is why the cosmos is named cosmos, عالم, from mark علامة, since it's a proof of the preponderator.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Irvina, okay. So this is where you got lost, right?
Yeah, that paragraph, the traveler is he who travels with his reflection.
Yes. Yeah. You just got lost in general. So it's just what we were talking about before. It's the exact same thing, but the traveler is on these journeys when he discovers who the preponderator is. That's the gist of it, right? Because he contemplates what his own existence means. His own existence is possible. So then he understands that it needs someone to give weight, to decide whether he should exist or not, to give weight and preponderance to existence over non-existence. So then he discovers the existence of his maker, his Sanir, his Murajjah, his preponderator, right? And then he goes on a second journey. That's the gist of the paragraph.
Thank you.
And if you just read it again in your own time, like you can come back to me with like more questions and stuff. Okay, guys. So let me just stop there, and mashallah, I got to entities. And then that carries on to all right other things as well. Okay, I'll just stop sharing here, inshallah. So we're up to page 83, and we'll just stop recording here.